the New York Football Giants. Or should we call them the New York Ants? Because that's what they felt like for the last 5 or 6 years. That's what they've been. New York Ants. Cockroaches. Little tiny bugs. Dumb little bugs in the land of the Big Apple. Because ever since, Tom Coughlin and that disaster that was Ben McAdoo, in all those years, the New York Giants have been pretty much nothing. They've been pretty much nothing. And that was pretty much the same old story in 2021. They actually had a decent shot at trying to vie for the NFC East, but they had a rash of injuries to the likes of Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard on the offensive side, and on the defensive side, safety Jabril Peppers gets hurt, along with other countless injuries, and not to mention the fact even when everyone eventually got back throughout the season, they were very, very undisciplined on both sides of the ball. They were making a lot of penalties, especially notably in that game against the Kansas City Chiefs on the Monday night. So their head coach, Joe Judge, was not necessarily acting like, Judge Judy or any of that. So the Giants go 4-13 in 2021 as a result, and out goes the Judge, as well as Dave Gettleman, who both get fired. Well, technically, Dave Gettleman retired, but that's just to save face, because technically, in my eyes, he did get fired for the ineptitude and the mediocrity that he's produced throughout his time with the New York Giants. So, the Giants are out to look for a new head coach and a new general manager. But in an actually surprisingly decent move by ownership, they actually went out and got a proven offensive coordinator in Brian Daboll, who has worked with Josh Allen, one of the biggest up-and-coming quarterbacks in the NFL, and who was a strong MVP candidate, came this close to going to his first AFC Championship game last season. So they hired Brian Daboll, Josh Allen's former offensive coordinator, and then they hire as a general manager Joe Schoen, who was also instrumental in getting Josh Allen. He was technically assistant general manager, but he was also part of that front office that got Josh Allen to the Buffalo Bills. So both of those guys coming over from the Western New York side, going to New Jersey. So there's your new head coach. There's your new GM combo. So for the Giants, you get some proven commodities. You get at least a proven winning head coach and GM combo. But how does that translate to pretty much a losing team for the better part of a half decade? So when you look at their offseason, when you see what they've done throughout their 2022 so far, they restructured contracts like Sterling Shepard, the wide receiver, the linebacker Blake Martinez, two kind of key parts of their team. They also restructured the contract of corner Adoree Jackson, and then from there they didn't really do too much. They added a quarterback in Tyrod Taylor from the Texans, who could be possible insurance in case Daniel Jones either gets hurt or he stinks up the joint. They also got a new center on the offensive line by the name of Joe Feliciano from the Bills. They also lost Evan Ingram to the Jacksonville Jaguars, their tight end, and they lost Jabril Peppers to the New England Patriots. So a key part of that defense is gone. So for the Giants, I guess they didn't really lose too much, but they also didn't really add much to help out their new head coach. But in the draft, that's where they really did their work, though, because they managed to get with their first round pick defensive end Kayvon Thibodeaux, who I actually did like when I did my filthy casual preview of that draft. From Oregon, he could get to the passer very well. He's big, athletic, raw talent, and he could be a good scheme. He could be a good fit in that Giants defense. They also got a tackle from Alabama in Evan O'Neal, who could be pretty solid, but we'll see how that offensive line forms out. A wide receiver from Kentucky by the name of Wandale Robinson. So overall, I mean, the Giants didn't necessarily have like a flashy offseason. But, I mean, they didn't really have a really terrible one either. So the Giants have a lot of questions going into their 2022 season because the offensive line still remains a question marks with all the positions undecided. Even though they have their mainstay left tackle, Andrew Thomas, you still have your center, Joe Feliciano, and your guard, Mark Glowinski, and tackle Evan O'Neal. It's no certain guarantee that those three guys are going to be locks of maintaining those starting spots. And it's no guarantee that they can protect Daniel Jones against even the worst of pass rushes, let alone their own in training camp or like regular season practices. So we'll see what happens from there. Now, one of the bigger questions is is Daniel Jones going to benefit from having Brian Daboll as whether it's his play caller or his actual offensive coordinator? We'll see, because, well, look at the work that Daboll did with Josh Allen in his time with Buffalo. Sure, Daniel Jones and Josh Allen, it's not a fair comparison, but we'll see how Daboll can at least try to make Daniel Jones be good enough, because Daniel Jones, I mean, he's not very terrible. He's not like total crap. I mean, he has some decent potential, but I don't think enough to be like a franchise starter. But Daniel Jones, maybe he can right the ship, but he's gonna have to limit those turnovers and all the bad qualities prior to Brian Daboll arriving on the scene. Now, another big question is, well, what do they do with Saquon Barkley? Like, there have been rumblings and speculation about whether or not they were going to trade Saquon throughout the offseason, or maybe during the season, because, well, throughout his time with the Giants, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think it was 2020 where he had the ACL tear, and then 2021 he missed multiple games with I think it was the ankle injury. 2019 he also managed to miss a couple of games. So for Saquon, we didn't really have much of a full season, or at least most of a full season, except for his rookie year. So it's a little rough for Mr. Barkley down in the Big Apple. So I don't know if the Giants, maybe if some team's running back room is getting very dry, maybe they could get some draft capital for him, or maybe they just run it back with him for one more year and see if he can prove his worth on the Giants and force New York to overpay for him and in free agency next year. So we'll see what happens in camp, because I do think the Giants could still be considering trading away Saquon Barkley, but I'm not sure. Now, I am interested in how Kayvon Thibodeau does on that defensive line, because, again, has some potential, but whether that results in anything positive or getting to the quarterback, or maybe even putting out stout performances, that remains to be seen. So for the Giants in 2021, I mean, you don't really know what you're getting. They didn't really improve that much, maybe on the offensive line, but we'll see how that translates to preseason action and regular season action. I do like some of the potential of Kayvon Thibodeau, but that remains to be seen. You also have question marks about how Daniel Jones is going to thrive in Brian Daboll's offense, and how whether or not Saquon Barkley is going to stay with the team or get traded. And you still have a decent receiving core: Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard. I forgot the name of the Lions receiver that they got a couple years in free agency 2 years ago. But for New York, I mean, I don't think they're gonna be too terrible unless they completely botch the whole thing. But maybe they could be third place the most in 2022. I'd say maybe they go double their win total, maybe 7-8 wins, being fair for the New York Giants, because I think Daboll could be one of those head coaches that actually does moderately successful, but that all depends on what Daniel Jones can do, whether or not he can lead this offense in spite of the flaws that are present currently for the New York Giants.